Connection terminated. Good afternoon, candles, if you even remember your names. I'm sorry I have to tell you this, but I'm afraid you've been misinformed. You are not here to receive a fight, nor have you been called here under the guise of rage bait, although you have been called. Summoned into a labyrinth of tears and tears, misinformation and blind appreciation. A jail with no exit, a view with no eyes. You don't even realize that you are trapped. Its need for love stalking you in endless circles, haunting the minds of fans like some unseen specter, always seeming so near, but forever out of reach. But it will never find you. None of you. This is where its story ends. And to you, my brave overseer, mustering the courage to watch this, even though it's not aimed at you, although the door is open for you, I have a feeling that's not what you want. I have a feeling that you are right where you want to be. I am remaining as well. I can never be free. This vid will not be remembered, but the agony that started all of this may someday fade away as well, as the pain of every misstep should. And to you monsters here for blood, be still and give up your watch time. It does not belong to you anymore. For most of you, I believe there is peace, maybe even more, once we've come to an understanding. Although for some of you, the darkest pit of Reddit has opened to swallow you whole. So don't keep the karma waiting, my friends. End communication.
FNAF 6 blows. Okay. Don't get the wrong idea. I love this game. I've already done a video on it. But the amount of blind dick sucking I've seen of this game is insane to me. I'm not here to convince you this game is bad. Far from it. I'm just here to convince you it's overrated and not the best one. Whenever you ask someone what their favorite parts of this game are, they usually say three things: the lore, the minigames, and the ending. Very, very rarely do I ever hear someone say The Office is their favorite part of the game, or even the salvage sections, which are quite enjoyable to look at or even listen to, but I always view them as pretty boring, especially with the knowledge that it doesn't even matter what you write down. Which leads me to my next point. I'm gonna try my hardest to stay away from intangible concepts like fun during this video. As easy as it would be for me to point at Candy Cadet and say, I like the stories he tells, but it's kinda boring once you've heard them all before, I'm not. Fun is subjective, and I rather use actual evidence and not emotions. FNAF 6 is split into three sections: the day shift, which sees you improving the pizzeria's attractions and appearance; the night shift, which has you doing paperwork, upgrading specific facets of the pizzeria, or unclogging toilets; and the salvage sections, which have you testing salvaged animatronics and deciding if they're worth keeping or not. And yes, I'm well aware that the day shift takes place at night and vice versa, but fuck you, I'm nocturnal. Starting off with the day shift, it's perfect. It's fun, it's addicting, easily a highlight of the entire series, and one of the main reasons I believe FNAF became more playful going forward. It's an all-around enjoyable time. The only real complaint I have is just how one-sided the relationship between the day shift and the night shift actually is. Yes, if you buy something risky or sell your soul to Lefty, then the night shift will be a pain in the ass, but nothing you do at night really affects the day, unless I'm missing something. You can accept ads in the day which clap your cheeks at night, you can accidentally buy a ball pit that has some evil spaghetti in it, and you can get sued because Ned Bear got a little too quirky around the kids. But to my knowledge, the night shift doesn't do anything impactful for the day shift. It's just a minor complaint in the grand scheme of things though. The real problems start when you introduce the night shift. Now, I've ragged on this monotonous slog of an office before, but the main reason I hate it is that unlike every other office in FNAF history, there is little to no feedback when the threat actually goes away. Now I know there are ways to tell how an animatronic moves, like certain sound effects that play when they enter the adjacent vents, or a voice line playing, or a crawling noise that plays, but the thing is that me, probably you, and the majority of the places I've gone to online literally don't know anything about these noises. I've heard a few of them, but not consistently enough to actually attribute them to any actions or specific things happening. I'm gonna play a few of the sounds for you, and I want you to tell me what they mean. Great. Now that you've heard that, I want you to confidently tell me which sound means what. Because if this video is true, then these vent noises play at specific moments, like when an animatronic is right next to you. And this isn't a knock at the video, by the way. I think this is a fantastic video, and I learned a lot. My problem is that I had to look it up to begin with. And this isn't just a case of me or a small minority of players being stupid. This is pretty common. Everywhere I look, I see people completely confused on how this game actually works. And those who aren't confused usually say, "You can look up a video to figure out how the game works." Guys, that's not a valid excuse. Having to look at something outside of the actual game to understand the fundamentals of it is not okay. What if that video just never existed? Then we'd just be fucked. Why is that acceptable? I covered this in my Help 1 and 2 vid, but you can get through nights 1 through 5 of the first 4 FNAF games without whipping out a search engine to understand it. Why is this game different? And it's not even like this game is special either. FNAF 4 also has a bit of an issue with sound cues. The footsteps are very hard to hear sometimes because they're very faint, especially over the sound of our own footsteps as we run to the doors and the closet, and the very loud and heavy ambience that FNAF 4 displays. But there's two things that save that game and not this one. The footsteps may be very hard to hear, but one thing I can always count on is the heavy breathing. A common thing I see with people who play FNAF 4 is that they'll lower their audio because, well, while the jump scares aren't nearly as ear-piercing as they are in Sister Location and FNAF 1, they definitely aren't pleasant either. The heavy breathing is very consistent in this game, and it really sucks that the jump scare audio is so loud because I'd probably like FNAF 4 a lot more if it didn't give me permanent ear damage whenever I played it. You can actually see the animatronics. This more so applies to Foxy, Freddy, Fredbear, and by proxy, Nightmare. The ones you'll see the most on early nights are Bonnie and Chica, but as always, they're reactionary animatronics, so you can just ignore them until you hear breathing. Freddy is a joke in terms of difficulty in this game, and Nightmare Foxy is genuinely one of the best mechanics this series has ever known, but I already went over that. FNAF 6 doesn't have any of that. It doesn't have animatronics you actually see, well, not until it's too late at least. And while it's absolutely fantastic in a horror environment for you to not see the threat, it gets fucking infuriating after 5 deaths. There's only so many times you can be scared by the same metal spaghetti or garbage clown or decrepit old man before you just don't care anymore and just want to move on. All of these vent sounds sound the fucking same. It's not like they fade in to signal the animatronic is getting closer, and they don't fade out to signal that they're going away either, which is what FNAF usually does with its footsteps. And if they do, then I simply haven't noticed it. I can barely hear these things to begin with, if I hear them at all. Every single game has a fallback in case an audio cue gets missed, but you want to know which one doesn't? FNAF 1, Bonnie's shadow goes away, Chica stops licking the glass, Foxy's banging stops when he's done throwing a tantrum. Even Freddy, the trickiest character in this game, will laugh and go backwards one cam if he tries attacking while the door is closed. All of this on top of being able to lift up the cam and see them yourself. FNAF 2, if they're in the vents, then you hear the banging as they crawl away. If you miss that, then you can just press the light button to check yourself if they aren't Toy Bonnie or Toy Chica and try to peek underneath your mask. If they're in the hall, then you'll most likely hear the ambience start playing and you can just check yourself, you lazy bastard. If they're in your office, then you see them fade away, although I will admit that it doesn't work very well sometimes. FNAF 3, the phantoms will no longer be where you last saw them if you successfully avoided them. And if it's Springtrap we're talking about, then not only will you usually hear his moaning, but the camera will fuzz up and he'll no longer be where you last saw him. He's an ever-present threat, so in reality, you're never really safe because depending on where he is, he could be one vent away from castrating you or a light jog from your location. FNAF 4, Foxy goes gay, Freddy no clips, Rabbit Stew and KFC can be heard walking away if you shut the door on them, and you see them sliding out of sight like they're on a freshly waxed floor if they're down the hall. However, it'd be a little disingenuous if I didn't call out that specifically Bonnie and Chica can't be seen leaving. You just gotta hope you close the door for long enough. Even Sister Location did this better. During Ennard's night, it's integral you use the camera to get quick glances at Ennard as he pulls fake out after fake out after fake out. You wait for him to make 2 noises, then shut the door in whatever direction you last heard. You flick up the camera briefly to check if he's still there or not and to calm your anxiety, which sounds simple, but in my opinion, it is one of the best office sections in the entire series. And in UCN, depending on who you have loaded in, you're never safe. Technically, all animatronics can be viewed if we ignore the rare cases like the puppet and Chica, but the music box is always present. You know you're screwed if it's not present. And for characters who don't even physically exist within the map, like Music Man for example, you usually have a really good indicator as to when they're actually a threat, like the noise meter at the bottom of the screen and L-chip or Old Man Consequences popping up. But the motion detector, I hear you cry out. Yet again, caught trying to get a pre-recorded MP4 to respond to you. Once again, let's remember, it's a motion detector. I can't see them if they're not moving. I'm not saying this game is unbeatable, I'm just saying it's a bit of an issue when every game before this, with the exception of Night 3 and 4 Sister Location, usually leaves the player with a sense of confidence in what they're doing by the end of it. Like, you'll still fucking die, don't get me wrong, everyone makes mistakes and RNG still exists, but you can at least identify what you did wrong in most cases. In FNAF 6, you just kinda shoot things at the wall and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. You don't know why they sometimes don't work or how it's even keeping you alive sometimes, but it just does. And I heard some people praise the game for how multiple different people can approach the game with completely different strategies, like some people not using silent ventilation at all, or others barely using the motion detector, or some people never turning off the AC in PC while others use the AC sparingly. Even the amount of time people stare into the vents differs from player to player, and while it is very cool that there seems to be no dev-intended strategy in this game, no matter what I succeed with, it always feels like luck. Consistency in this game is as rare as finding a shark in the desert. Regardless, I already know what brilliant response I'll get. Just look at a video that explains the AI. The salvage sections in this game are cool, but I can't help but view them as just one really long, unskippable cutscene. Like, yeah, you can always just throw it back like you need to pay the bills, but nothing in the salvage section actually matters. When I first saw this part of the game years ago, I was extremely excited, because being able to sit down in front of one of the very things trying to put us on a t-shirt, testing them, writing down what you may discover, seeing what makes them tick, in a twisted way, it's a very high stakes interview. And then I realized it doesn't matter at all what you write down. It really killed the excitement for this section. I didn't mention in my original video because at the time I felt like it didn't really matter due to its short length, but after how frequently I've been replaying this game to formulate an opinion on it in recent times, I'm starting to hate it. It just feels like a pointless cutscene with a few QuickTime events sprinkled in. And while I could just throw the animatronic away, I'm also throwing out the huge amount of money each animatronic is worth. Just skipping parts of the game that I hate don't suddenly erase it from the code. The problems are still there. Okay, put down your pitchforks. I think this is something that isn't said enough in the FNAF community, but lore should be secondary to gameplay when discussing how fun a game is to play. I get it. Henry's speech goes hard. The lore in Pizzeria Sim is incredibly interesting. I love the creepy factor that Lefty was made to capture the puppet, and that you can see the puppet inside of Lefty when he's in the alley. I think Candy Cadet's stories are very thought-provoking, and I deeply enjoy the ongoing debate of just what the fuck is up with Midnight Motorist. It's all fine and dandy, and we are talking about a fan base where the majority of us don't even bother playing the game. So many of us are lore first, game second. But when evaluating a game's worth, I think it's good to evaluate the whole thing, not just the story. And if we were to look at the FNAF games as a whole and take into consideration their gameplay and their lore, I'd say the top 3 candidates for all around best FNAF game are probably going to FNAF 1, UCN, and maybe FNAF 4. But I feel like I'm reaching with that last one, and before you punch your monitors, keep in mind we're taking into account lore and gameplay, so don't cry because I didn't mention FNAF 2. In short, is this game the worst FNAF game? No. Maybe, possibly, I don't know. I don't hate this game. Far from it, actually. I wouldn't make one, let alone 2 videos on it if I truly despise this game. I'm just tired of hearing people say, FNAF 6 is peak, and then seeing someone ask them to explain their opinion, only for them to respond with, the lore, that ending was incredible, and then say nothing about the actual gameplay. Either way, if you want to say hi or just had any comments on what I said today, please share them down below. Consider subscribing or dropping a follow on Twitch if you truly love my content. And as usual, I am terrible at outros. Bye bye. I had to record this script 3 times because my microphone is a piece of shit.